How's it going, everyone? Welcome to this week's Q&A. So like any other week, if you want a chance at one of your questions being featured in the following video, make sure you drop a comment down below with your question, and I'll either address it in that question itself, or I'll make a video dedicated to it, or it'll be featured in one of these videos like here today. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the first question. And it is, why do Hondas typically have a reputation of being reliable? So if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I've been posting a lot of issues, a lot of recalls, and a lot of that has to do with quality control and what's happening globally around the world the last couple of years, and some EPA pushes that are just making these manufacturers, do things that they probably normally wouldn't do, but they're trying to meet all these regulations, these laws, these rules, or whatever you want to call it. So I think in the early 90s, 2000s, the golden generation of Hondas were great. And, they just lasted long times, a lot of them 300, 400, 500,000 miles if you maintain it reasonably well. Now, with today's mentality and today's people, a lot of them are leasing, and a lot of them just don't care to do any maintenance while they're leasing those cars or renting them, as I like to say, right? Because you're renting it for somebody else to go buy it as a second owner. So a lot of these issues won't come to fruition until the second owner takes, ownership of this vehicle. And that's when we see a lot of issues with transmissions failing, turbochargers failing, head gaskets, injectors, infotainment systems, or whatever you fill in the blank. So my advice is, if you're buying, whether it's new or a certified pre-owned, you do purchase Honda Care or Acura Care. It's well worth the investment. Or even if you're buying a different manufacturer, get their warranty extension program. Whatever it costs you, just get it. One failure of substance will pay for itself, I promise you. So I think that's the majority of the reason why Honda had a great reputation, and they can still be reputable. I have a lot of vehicles with 2020s, 2021s, a lot of Uber drivers that do their regular maintenance, and the vehicles do tend to last an extremely long time. They rack up sometimes 100,000 miles a year. There's a particular CRV that had nearly 300,000 miles already. I believe it was like a 19 or 20. So without any major failures. So it is important that you do this maintenance, but a lot of people shy away from that because, again, they're leasing these cars, they do poor maintenance habits, and the second owner, unfortunately, has to pay for that somewhere along the line. So hopefully that answers the question for you. All right, so the next question is, what are some early signs of starters failing? So the most obvious one will be, you go to try to start your car and there's a single click. You try to start a couple times and you hear a single click every time. Eventually it starts and kicks over. So that's going to be the most common failure. Sometimes a second failure could be when you go try to start it and it sounds slower than it normally would, and the starter's just causing too much of a draw. And even though you have a fresh battery, it's still cranking slow. That would be another sign of a bad starter. Obviously, there need to be some professional diagnosing to pinpoint that, because it could be a bad ground, some bad wiring somewhere. But typically, that would be the two major signs that we see. Obviously, you want to make sure your battery is good, but if your battery is good and you have a single click, then that's pretty obvious that your starter has failed at that point. So if you're having any of those two scenarios, I would definitely get it diagnosed properly. Don't just assume it's a starter. It could be something else, but 9 out of 10 times, most likely. But again, it's worth the investment to pay somebody to pinpoint and make sure that's your actual concern. But yeah, if you're having a single click type of scenario, or an extremely slow cranking or slower cranking type of situation, then I would probably start thinking of replacing your starter at that time. So hopefully that answers the question for you. So the next question is, you had some work done on your vehicle. Now you have a new concern that wasn't there before. Now, for example, if you've had some sort of a mechanical work done to the engine and now you have a noise that wasn't there before, then it's very possible that something may have been left loose or done improperly. Now, if you had an oil change done, for instance, and now you have a vibration or something, chances are that's not anything related to what was done to the vehicle. And we do get this concern all the time. It literally will say, I was just here for an oil change, now I have a vibration, or I have a noise, or I have a check engine light, or whatever the case may be. Now, sometimes it could be related to what was done, although in that instance, probably wasn't, and unfortunately it just was a coincidence. Now, if you had some suspension work done and you hear a noise afterwards that wasn't there before, or you had some work done and the noise still persists, then obviously something was either replaced incorrectly, or they replaced the wrong part, or they left something loose. So you just have to be mindful here of the situation, of the scenario. Don't go accusing people of something that has been completely unrelated to what was just done to the car, although you can still bring up up the concern and see if they want to address it for you, or it just be a whole new concern that needs to be addressing in a different manner. So we see it all the time. People come in, have something done, and then a check engine light comes on. And now there are shops out there that will do stuff that they shouldn't be doing, and to have you purposely come back. So that goes back to all my videos I've been saying. You need to trust your mechanic, whether it be a dealership or an independent shop. If you don't have that trust, then you need to find yourself someplace that you do have and could build some trust with. And you should be able to trust your mechanic, and vice versa. They should be able to trust you, and that if you have a legitimate concern, they will address it for you, especially if you've been going back to them for a couple of different times. So with that being said, hopefully that answers the question for you. The next question is timing chain service intervals. You should never have to change a timing chain if you've been doing your oil changes properly. So if you've been doing it between 3,000 to 5,000 miles, your car should go 300, 400, 500,000 miles on an original chain. Now, if you're in there for, let's say, a head gasket and a car has 200,000 miles, then it's probably a good idea to get your chain, your guides, and your tensioner changed at that time. Other than that, I wouldn't put a set time or a set mileage on any timing change service interval at that point, unless if again you went in there for a different reason and a car has a substantial mileage. If you go in there for a head gasket, for example, on a 1.5T, and it blew at 40,000 miles, you could just reuse that timing chain, that tensioner, those guides, unless if you saw something that called for changing that stuff. For example, once again, if there was inconsistent oil changes and you notice some sludge buildup, chances are your chain are stretched and will cause a code eventually, and keep stretching if there's poor service intervals at that point. So with that being said, hopefully that answers the question for you. So the next question is, what is an affordable aftermarket strut? So typically I like to stick with OEM Honda suspension components, although as the vehicles get older, sometimes it just doesn't make sense. Plus Honda struts don't come complete. You have to piece everything together. I wish they really offered the option here of getting just the strut or the assembly together, but again, they don't. So I'm going to say go with whatever is local to you, and wherever, if you're traveling, once again, that you could get that service if in the event there was an issue with it. I try to stay away from like Amazons and the eBays, but the truth is some of the prices are super hard to beat, and you could even get protection coverage for it. Obviously, that would just cover the part and not the actual labor in the event of a failure. So if you have a place that does them and can warranty both the part and the labor, that would probably be your best bet. Now, if you're shopping and you're just trying to do some work on your own, I would probably just go with one of the two options. Monroe was brought up, and Monroe is a pretty reliable and reputable aftermarket company for struts, at least. So I'm okay with that, and just do some cross-referencing on whatever your situation is on your vehicle, and just try to find the best deal with the best warranty. And honestly, that would probably be my choice, especially if you're doing it yourself. In the event of a failure, you don't have to pay the technician or the mechanic again to replace that part. So hopefully that answers the question for you. All right, so last but not least, question of the week. And once again, if you want a chance to win your questions being featured in a future video, make sure you do drop a comment down below. So at what service interval, what mileage should you be replacing your coils? And to be honest, again, unless if really high mileage scenario over here, I probably wouldn't be replacing all the coils at a set without any good reason. Now, if one of your coils fell at like 40,000 miles or 50,000 miles, I would probably just replace that individual coil at that time. Now, if one of them happens to fail at 200, 250,000 miles, you could probably go ahead and replace the whole set, just because if one failed at that point, probably the other ones aren't too far behind. It would probably make financial sense at that point, and you've made, you've gotten your money out of all four coils at that point, right? So recently, I've had two people actually come up to me replacing the alternators early or before they failed, just because they had a bad situation happen to them. And sometimes these parts do fail at the worst possible time. So in both scenarios, both vehicles had about 150,000 miles, and the customers actually had the same story on their previous vehicles. They failed right around that mileage, and they said, you know what, better safe than sorry. Let me go ahead and replace these alternators before they fail. So same thing could apply to these coils at this point. Again, if you had a bad scenario happen to you, a lot of people don't like to have that repetitive situation happen to them again, and they would replace those parts at that time. But as far as normal circumstances, just replacing them for replacing them, in my opinion, there's no needed. But if it makes you sleep better at night, then go ahead and do so. It's your money, it's your vehicle. And once again, these parts do fail at the worst times. You know, oftentimes at night you got to call a tow truck because the vehicle is not drivable. Then you still have to get the vehicle serviced or repaired or whatever the case may be, and cost you a lot more money than if you were just to do it proactively. So that'll be it for this video, and I'll catch everyone on the next one.